Hey everybody, back with another video, but of something different this time. Recently I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and was watching a whole bunch of retro computer stuff, and I used to be a Commodore 64 owner. I had one in middle school, and this is the computer really that I kind of remember the most, from the Atari 2600 to the Commodore 64, and that's what I had in middle school. And I sold it with all my games like an idiot, and my monitor and everything, printer, I had everything, disk drive. I sold it in high school, and then later on in high school, I ended up getting an Amiga 500. But I also sold that and then went into PCs like most people and stuff like that. So, but anyway, I went down the rabbit hole and I picked up this Commodore 64 off of eBay, I think, and I probably paid too much for it, but it came with some accessories and stuff. And then this one popped up on Facebook, and I probably paid too much for it as well. And it turns out both of them are not working. So I actually have to do some work on them and stuff like that, that's why I'm doing this video for an intro. So I figured I would just kind of get you up to date. I'm kind of dabbling in this retro computer thing for the first time. And there's a lot of learning or relearning, or maybe even learning better than what I knew when I was a kid, some of the capabilities of these computers and how to fix them and stuff like that. I never knew how to do that, obviously, when I was like 11 years old. So I'll be right back, because then just yesterday, I think, I picked up this Amiga 500, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So basically, this Amiga was also on Facebook, and just like getting started in the hobby of arcade collecting, you usually end up paying too much for the very first games that you buy. But this was kind of interesting. I saw it, and it was actually spelled wrong. It wasn't spelled like Amiga, and so maybe that's why. And I went up to get it. It comes with an extra disk drive and a mouse. I'm going to go over all this stuff real quick just to share some games. It was purchased by the owner's dad, and they've had it basically in the family. So, and they said it didn't work. So, but they wouldn't budge on the price. So I was like, all right, whatever. I want it, so I'm going to get it. Came with this printer, and it also came with a 1084 monitor. And I asked if it worked, and they said yes. And I was like, okay, I think I paid for like $150 maybe for everything. So it's not a terrible deal. And I was like, okay, well, this 1084 could come in handy with the arcade stuff that I do. So if nothing else, at least I'll have a good monitor out of it. But of course, I'm going to get into that in a second. It also came with some paper, a whole bunch of ribbons for the printer. I don't know, I guess that's a dot matrix printer, Star NX1000. I have no idea. So it's just interesting because I'm kind of learning or rediscovering this computer that I didn't have a lot of history with. Real quick, the backstory is, had my Commodore 64 for a long time, got rid of it. I went over to one of my friends from middle school that I had from overseas. We were both back in the States. I went over to his house in probably like 1989 or something like that. I think I was driving by then. So, and he had Amiga 500, and he had this game called Fairy Tale, and I was blown away. I was like, holy crap. I mean, that game is freaking awesome. The graphics were awesome. The music of this game called Fairy Tale. And so it was just always in the back of my mind that I wanted an Amiga 500. And I think I eventually got one, but I was already in high school and really too busy with work and sports and school and stuff like that to actually really enjoy or get into the Amiga scene, if you will. So I'm definitely not an Amiga person like some of the guys on the net and stuff like that. I just feel like maybe I never had the opportunity to spend that much time really appreciating this computer and what it can do. So that's why I was kind of interested in kind of getting one and kind of going back and maybe spending some time that I didn't have time to spend with it originally. So, all right, so that's the backstory. Let me go through some of the stuff that we have here. So, came with the Amiga 500. I've already powered it on, and it was just a blank screen. So I'll catch you up on that. The mouse, extra disk drive. Actually, still had the original cardboard that you put into the disk drive for transportation, or when it first gets purchased. Has this Amiga 500 user guide, or the original manual, and even the original warranty as well. Unfortunately, I didn't see the original price tag, which would have been interesting, because I think these were, around $500 or something like that. With all this stuff, it was probably a lot more, probably close to $1,000 at least with the monitor and everything. Back in whenever this was made, I think this was actually, I'm going to open up the case here in a second, but I think this was made in like 1987 or 88, this particular one. Here we have some type of mouse pad package that was $8.99. And let me put this on a tripod. All right, let's discover some of the stuff, because I just found it interesting, because this has been just sitting in somebody's box of their parents' house probably forever. And my furnaces or my air conditioning is about to turn on. It's hot as donkey out here in Virginia. But this right here is kind of interesting. It looks like it's a catalog, 1947, but it's really for the game Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? So that's obviously a game that was with the system. This was probably something for the printer. I'm going to go fast. Some type of craft joystick, Atari compatible. Never seen that, and unfortunately I don't actually have it, so it didn't come with the stuff that I got. This must be something for the printer, Star Micronics. Never heard of them, or don't remember them anyway. Shows you, I guess, how much some of the models cost. What do I have? An NX1000 was suggested retail pricing, cartridge ribbon pricing, $10 per cartridge. Interesting. See here, this looks like the cover might have been ripped off. Test Drive. Oh no, I just have it folded. Here we go. Test Drive by Accolade. I think that's how you say it. And I actually had this game when I had the Amiga. I did have Test Drive, so that's a game that I remember playing on the Amiga 500. What's interesting is, my friend had that game Fairy Tale, and I never actually bought the game Fairy Tale. So I bought the Amiga 500, but never actually had the game that I actually was drawn to, I guess, when I bought it. This is kind of interesting. It says Happy Holidays from 1987 from Accolade. And I definitely remember I had some of these games here, so I'm just going to go through them real quick. Apollo 18, I did not have that. Fourth and Inches, of course I was into sports, so I definitely had Fourth and Inches and remember playing that game. And remember it being a ton of fun. Test Drive, which was really cool because it gave you a lot of specs of the cars, and most teenagers, at that time were car fanatics. Either did I have Test Drive for the C64 or for the Amiga? I'm not sure. I don't actually have remember which game I had it for, or which system I had it for. But I just remember memorizing 0 to 60 stats and horsepower stats and all that stuff. So that definitely appealed to me. Pinball Wizard, I didn't have that. The Deluxe Paint, I think it was not by Accolade, but that was by Electronic Arts. I think I had that. I definitely had this game called Hardball by Accolade. For some reason, Accolade was one of my favorite. Them and EA, for whatever reason. Maybe it's the sports games and stuff like that. I remember having a lot of their stuff. I remember seeing Aces of Aces, but I don't necessarily remember playing it. And then there's some golf game and a boxing game that almost looks like... Gosh, why? I think I had that game. That Fight Night game. Did I have that for C64? Maybe, yeah, because maybe I had that for C64 back then. So a lot of pirated games for C64 too. There's a manual for the 1084 color monitor. So 13 inches, and for the monitor, guys, 0.42 millimeters dot pitch. So it's definitely a higher res. It's a slotted mask, so with in 0.42 millimeters pitch. So it's not really a dot pitch. It's because it's a slotted mask, but whatever. It's basically, it gives you good better resolution than most monitors at that time, based off of that. So great. It's a really good monitor. Another warranty card, 90-day warranty card from Commodore. That's obviously expired. Another warranty card, warranty card for Accolade. I think that's how you say it. I have no idea. What else we got? Something for the Craft giveaway sweepstakes for that joystick. Interesting. You got to submit by January 31st, 1988. I guess we're a little too late for that. Here's a advanced integration research Commodore Amiga external drive A1010. So that's the external drive that I have right there. So we got the warranty card for that. Interesting. Is that when the warranty expired, or is that when it was manufactured? 10/20/1998. So anyway, this is definitely fits the retro bill. Let's see here. User guide for the rainbow color printer. I don't know what I'm going to do with that because I probably won't print stuff. Computes Beginner's Guide to the Amiga by Don McNeil. Interesting. It covers a lot of different stuff in here. To the personal computer. Got a book for Amiga Basic. I assume that this came with the actual computer itself to teach you Basic, just like Commodore. The 64 had some of this type of manuals as well. We got Deluxe Paint 2 manual by Electronic Arts. I never got into a lot of the graphic stuff. I remember, I think, having either Paint 3 or Paint. I had one of these from Electronic Arts, but I don't remember actually doing a ton with it. Mostly I was just gaming and stuff like that. This is called Instant Music. Requires the 512K and Kickstart 1.2. And it has a manual in it. And I don't know if I have the disc for that or not. We'll see. This is some type of education thing. So this was purchased by a parent for their kid. And I actually bought it from the, well, they're not kids anymore, but oh, this is kind of cool. Man, this might be worth hanging up in my arcade. A Who Framed Roger Rabbit, let me back up a little bit, poster. That's cool. This might be worth hanging up in the arcade. Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That was some Discovery space adventure thing. I don't know. There's no disc in it. Another one, Discovery Software International. Welcome to Zoom. I don't know. I'm sure this is some type of educational type of thing. Oh, actually, it does have the disc in it. Right there. So that's kind of cool. And I don't know if this is boring or not. I'm really just documenting because I found it kind of interesting. This is some type of word processing software called Scribble. Definitely did not use it for that. Somebody made some notes. Has like a little notepad in here. How to use a word processor. And then MaxiPlan 500. Spreadsheet analysis, database management, business graphics for informed business solutions. Best spreadsheet, 1986. So yeah, probably won't spend a lot of time trying to learn that, but that's interesting stuff. Let's go through some of the games or some of the discs. So the Amiga, what are these, 3.5 inch, I think? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So this is, you can't really see it. It says Workbench 3.1, 1989. But is it? I have no idea. It says keep locked. We'll put that to the side. And that's the thing is, like, when I picked this up, I didn't even remember what Workbench was. I just remember, you know, I had an Amiga 500. I played some games on it, and that's pretty much all I know. So that's why I thought it might be interesting to film this. Is I'm kind of having to learn all this stuff all over again, or just learn it for the first time, even though it's, you know what, almost 30 years later. Leisure Suit Larry, I think that's an adult game. I remember hearing about it. I don't remember actually playing it. This is Balance of Power, probably a game. I don't remember it. Whoops. I'll just kind of toss through these. Better Dead Than Alien. Okay. Probably a game. Arachnoid. Arknoid 2. There's Test Drive. The Beast. 2-disc game, I guess. Running Man. Probably after the movie. Don't remember playing that. Something called 4x4. Obviously those were copies or bootlegs or something. The original game, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Disc 1 and 2, Deluxe Paint 3, Page Flipper, don't know what that is, 3D Mod Program, Videoscope or Videoscape 3D, no idea, probably, you know, not sure what those are, have to look it up. This one says Deluxe Paint. We got Discovery spell version for Amiga personal computers. Social studies for Amiga. Okay, there's that instant music. So I do have the disc for it. Scribble. And I actually have the manual for this, so I wonder where the original drive is. This looks like it's a copy, obviously. Another Deluxe Paint 3. Amiga Workbench version 1.2. So I'll set that to the side. Some looks like blank discs, Amiga Extras, Amiga Basic, and that's all the discs there. So that's pretty much everything I got. I got the power supply. I got this, looks like an Atari 26 joystick. I don't know if it's a knockoff or not. But you can use just standard D sub, or is that 9 pins or something like that you could use, so that would work. Have the mouse, and then I have this, a couple other, got the power supply, which has the power switch on it. The other cool thing, which I'm going to show in a second, you can see it, is it shows how to test the power. It shows you which pins are for what power, if you can see that right on the underside of this one. And this one, and I've been down the rabbit hole here, so I've been researching a lot of this stuff. So this power supply, I think they had two versions of this. One was like 2 point something amps, and one was 4.5 amps on the 5 volt. This is 4.5 amps, and it does have that weird connector as well, like this. And so that was the first thing. I'm just going to go through everything I did with this computer, including the monitor so far, because I'm sure it needs to be retro brighted. The keys are jacked, it look terrible and stuff like that. So when I come back, let's test the power, because this is the first thing I did. I didn't just plug it in and hope and pray. I wanted to test the power just like we would do in an arcade machine. and fire it up. Alright, so what I did is I just hooked up a jumper wire for my negative lead, and this pin right here, when looking at it this way, the pin in the upper right, which is supposed to be pin 4, is signal ground. So I'm putting my lead there. Hopefully it's not, doesn't come flying off, and stays out of the way. And then I think pin 5 is in the middle, and that is plus 12 volts. And down here is pin 1, which is your 5 volts. So 5 plus 12, no, I'm sorry, 5 minus 12 in the middle. So 5 down here, it's hard to see, minus 12, and then plus 12. So from the lower right going diagonal here is all our voltages. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the power supply, and then let's try to test this. Alright, there you go, 5.1. Yeah, testing these are a pain in the butt. I just can't get good contact there. But it's negative 12. There we go. And then let's do plus 12. It says plus 12.2. So we're within range there. So that was the first thing I did, and hopefully I'll shorten that up with me fumbling around. Kind of a pain in the butt to test it, but you definitely want to test this power supply and make sure that the 5 volts is within spec. 5.1 should be fine. It might, should it be closer to 5 versus 5.1? I have no idea. But it's not 5.25. Usually most logic chips have at least some tolerance, up to 5.25 usually. So we can plug it in, but I have to first figure out how to hook up the monitor to it. So, alright, here's the back of the monitor, and no joke, I had to read the manual because I did not remember all this stuff. I kind of have been picking up some of it based off of watching some YouTube videos and stuff, but this 1084 monitor, let's see here, let's read some stuff. Model 1084, November 1987. So again, it looks like this whole setup was probably bought in 1987. I don't know. I think what I read was this monitor supports a couple of different modes of operation. You can use composite video, and then it does have a speaker, so audio, or you can use separate chroma and luma, I think is what you say, which is what the Commodore 64 typically uses. Then you can use digital RGB, which is this TTL RGB there, and you can use analog RGB. And this selector here, if it's in, it's for composite video, and if it's out, it's for separate luma and chroma. So I don't think I'll read the manual to you guys, but I think for the Amiga we want to use the analog RGB, which gives us like 4,000 colors or something like that. But the cool thing is I got all the cables with it that actually originally came with the thing, so which is nice because my Commodore didn't actually, the 64s that I picked up didn't come with any cables. So this is the cable for the Amiga. It has this like 25 or something pin connector there, and like an 8-pin DIN connector that goes into the back there. It also came with the separate luma and chroma and audio cable, which would work with the C64 that has the 8-pin connectors, which mine do. So there's some older C64s that have 5-pin connectors, so that this is for the 8-pin, which supports the separate luma and chroma, which gives you better image. And then I guess this is for the Commodore 128. I don't know, I never had a Commodore 128, but it's 8 pins here, and then I think this is a 9-pin connector there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see. Yeah, 9 pins. Duh, but one pin's broken. Or no, one pin is probably like a key or something. So that's that. And then we also had this audio cable, which was probably original as well. That allows you to take stereo output from the Amiga into a single, I guess, mono type of style input on the 1084. So all of that came with the 1084. So I had to read all that, and I figured I'd cover it with you guys because it is kind of like discovering everything for the first time again. If you can see this, there we go. I'm at the back of the Amiga, and this says mono, but what I believe that to be is kind of like a monochrome, not mono audio obviously, but a monochrome video output. The RGB video, that's the cable that we need to install to get our analog video over. There's the power connector, a parallel port, a serial port, a connector for your disk drive. There's your audio left and right, and then joystick 1 and 2. So I just went ahead and plugged in the RGB because I kind of figured this out without reading the manual. But I'm going to plug that in, plug our power in, and then hook it up. All right, I'll be right back. I'm just kind of recapping what I've already done a little bit, and I have this piece of paper on here just to keep the glare reflection out of the way. But I was told that the monitor worked, and so I have everything plugged in. I have the Amiga plugged in. I haven't powered it up or anything. I have it connected to this monitor, but I wanted to turn on the monitor just to see if it works. So I pressed the power button, and I could see the high voltage come up. You can see that there was static on the screen. It sucked the paper to the screen actually, but then it immediately went off, and I'm like, what the heck? Do I have like high voltage shutdown or something? I mean, what's going on here? So I was just thinking about it, and then I started researching it a little bit, and I figured out if I hold the power down and then it turned up my brightness up, I would actually see an image. So I don't know if I can do that with one screen. There we go. So you can see, even with the piece of paper on there, that I'm getting an image. So I knew that the monitor was working, but as soon as I let go of the power button, it turns off. So that kind of sucked, right? I was told the monitor worked, but obviously it kind of does work, but it won't stay on. And after doing some research online, it's a common thing with these 1084s. I figured out that this power switch, something happens internally on this power switch where it doesn't, it breaks, or something internal breaks or something like that. So some people hardwire it on, and some people I guess order a new switch. I found a guy in a thread. Hopefully I ordered some switches and they will be on their way, a replacement switch, and I'll do a video of actually replacing that switch. But with that status there, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit there and screw with this and just hardwire it just so I can actually see the image on this thing. I will use my PVM monitor, which is up here, and that does support composite video, and this has a monochrome composite video out. So what I figured I would do is actually plug in my PVM to that mono connection that we showed just a second ago. So let me do that and get that. Alright, so now I have my PVM connected here into that mono section there, monochrome connection. We have our activity lights here. There's no disc in, and again, I'm kind of recapping what I've already done a little bit, but I'm kind of showing you step by step what I went through yesterday, because I didn't know that you even had to have a disc in. I didn't know anything. I was just turning it on and seeing what happened. Hook up this monochrome connection. I tested the power, turned it on, and that's all I got, was that white screen or gray screen. Now I'm actually showing you the Amiga, but yesterday all I would get was that gray screen with no Amiga workbench, or I guess they call this the Kickstart bootloader or something like that. All I had was a white screen, and no matter what I did, I was like, "Dang, what the heck? Is it my PVM?" I couldn't tell what it was because I wasn't getting any image, but I could tell I was getting NTC connected on it. But it was just a white image, not that Kickstart. And then you would hear the disk drive go tick, 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 and I would get this power button here, but no Amiga workbench icon. So that's when I'll be right back. Actually, they say also, by the way, in the manual, that you should, if you power this on, if you power it off, you shouldn't power it back on right away. You should wait 5 seconds. So just FYI, if you're powering on and off the system, once you power it off, you're supposed to wait at least 5 seconds, I guess, because you could do damage to the computer. So let me put this back on the tripod, because at that point, since I wasn't getting an image, I figured, let's take this thing apart and see what it looks like inside. So I flipped it over. I was doing some research. I knew that there was an expansion memory card possible in here. I opened this up and didn't see that expansion memory card. To take off the top case, there's 3 Torx screws here, and I think three right here, I believe, right there. 1, 2, 3. And I took those off and then flipped the machine back. All right, I know this is somewhat anticlimactic, I guess. Climatic. But anyway, I figured I'd show you because I did it. I took that off. After you take off the Torx screws, then you can, let's see here, unplug the keyboard connection like that. And then you can take this keyboard out, except for over here on the right hand side, there's like a ground strap to the disk drive, if you see that. So I need to get a screwdriver and undo that to get the keyboard out. But instead of doing that, let's see, can I remove this? Yeah, I'll do that actually. All right, so I took that screw off right there, holding the that little ground connection, like that right there. Remove the keyboard, and that left with some additional screws. I think I had some screws over here, some screws there. There's these little tabs that you have to fold back for this ground plate or RF shielding, probably. There's a tab there, so a couple screws there, and then once you do that, the RF shielding should be able to come off pretty easily. Like that. And you definitely want to make sure you're grounded or touch some metal, you know what I mean, to ground yourself. And this is what it looks like on the inside. And I was like, okay, well, what the heck? This is where that expansion memory card module goes, and some people online said that could be the reason for the gray screen and the logo or the Kickstarter not showing up. And I'm no Amiga expert. I'm just kind of documenting exactly what I did. I was just looking for any leaky caps. I didn't even start doing ESR measurements on them or anything. I was just looking for any corrosion, anything that was, obvious to me. I went ahead and removed this as well, just to look underneath to see if there was anything there. I didn't know if there was a battery on this thing. Again, I don't know much about Amigas, so everything was kind of just exploring. So what I did is, since all these chips are socketed, also look at that 6800 right there. I mean, I didn't realize that thing was so big like that. It's pretty big. Is it? Yeah, 6800 or 68,000, whatever. 68000, I think, or whatever. But that's the main processor there. You have the Fat Agnes right there. I can't remember what that does. I've been reading some stuff. There's schematics in the manual as well. And then you have the odd CIA. This has got to be some type of interface adapter, IA. Commodore interface adapter, maybe, CIA, if you can see it right there. So I just went and reseated all these chips, and then connected it back up, and then it was fixed. I got actually the Kickstarter loaded, so I don't even know which one of these chips is the ROM. I don't think it's socketed. And is this it? I need to go find that out, because one of these chips is actually a ROM chip, and I don't know how to upgrade it or anything like that. But oh, here's something interesting too. It says Rock Lobster, and it's a A500 Rev 5. A500 Rev 5 is what it says there. So that's what the inside of the computer was. I got lucky. I was really disappointed that it wasn't working. Reseated all the chips, fired it back up, and it was working. So let me go ahead and put it back together loosely and show you the screen on the PVM real quick. Alright, hopefully I didn't screw anything up by just trying to demonstrate that. But I went ahead and hooked up the mouse into joystick port 1. I hooked up the second disk drive, floppy disk drive up. I hooked up the power, and even though I have my RGB connection hooked up, I'm not using it. I'm using the monochrome output there on the PVM. So go ahead and double check. Let me double check my work. Power it up. Alright, sweet. So, and that's what I got after I reseated those chips. I got that on there, and I had to figure out, okay, well, it says Workbench, so probably put in the Workbench disk, and this one is the one that you can barely see it. It says it's Workbench 3.1, but once I did that, it's loading up. You see the drive light there, and then I got a little bit more information on my screen there. So it says 1985 Workbench 1.2 version 33.47, use preferences tool to set date. So let me come back and turn the lights out and put this on a tripod and just show you kind of what I initially started exploring. Right, I don't know how well this is going to work out, but anyway, you see this, it says I don't know what this is. It says Virus X 2.10 by Steve. I gotta look that up. I don't know what that is, but you can close it. Workbench release 1.2. Looks like there's 400K of memory free, and now I can double click. Which was interesting is it said Workbench 3. something, but I guess it is 1.2. And this is the first time I've ever done this. Like I don't remember doing this when I actually owned the Amiga to begin with. I double clicked demos, nothing happened, so that part is empty, I guess, at least on this disk. Utilities, so I forgot that Amiga actually had a somewhat of a Windows environment. There's a notepad, a calculator, a trash can, preferences. That's where it said to go set time, but I don't think there's a clock on the system. You have to have the expansion memory to have an onboard battery backup. So it has your color palette. Right now we're in monochrome, so none of this actually matters. I did set the date, so must record it to, is that still the right date? I don't know if that is the right date or not. That was the date that I had. I set that yesterday. No, it's not 8:40. So it's obviously not keeping the date. That doesn't make any sense. You must have to set the date every time unless you have a real-time clock, I guess, every time you come in here and launch this thing. So I had never used this before, don't remember it. And so then I started putting in some of those game discs, and some of them wouldn't work. I was trying to figure it out. Maybe I'll turn on the lights and show you. Let's see, utilities. Oh yeah, I already clicked on that. System. I have no idea what half of this stuff says. But then I went to this say or the CLI prompt, and I started typing on the keyboard to make sure my keyboard was working, and I pressed enter. You can't see it right now because I have the lights off and I'm focused on the screen, but I pressed enter and it doesn't work. I have to use the numeric key, enter key, to actually get enter to work. So not all the keys, there's something going on with the keyboard itself. Not all of the characters or keys are working. So I need to figure that out. I think that's, and look, I don't know how to get out of the CLI either. Do I type in exit? Quit. So I don't even know how to get out of this window, the CLI window. Close maybe. Alright, so there you go. Anyway, obviously it's working. I won't spend too much time on this, but I was just clicking around and messing around. Let me come back and actually put some discs in. So yeah, so I didn't realize, I don't know, I put in a disc like Running Man here. I don't know if this was the one I did it with. But once you put the disc in, oh, see, see how I got this error validating disk, some checksum error? I was like, alright, cancel that. Let's see here, I can send this to the back, I think. Or drag this window down, the CLI window. And it says DF1 not DOS, I don't know. So this disk floppy 1 in DOS. So this is the stuff, like I said, I don't really understand. So if I double click that, it tries to do something but it doesn't work. So I was like, I didn't understand how I was supposed to actually run a game. So what I figured out was if I eject my workbench disk and put Running Man in here for disk 1 and the other Running Man in here, and then I think to reset you press this key, the two Amiga keys or Amiga and Commodore keys in Control at the same time, and it will reset. I'll be right back. So we'll reset right here the computer. Zoom up in there. And then it started doing something. So I guess you have to, for some of these games, you have to actually boot straight to its disk. And I don't know what it's saying. It's saying something like Running Man. Click on that. Click the mouse. Both discs are working, I think. That sounds bad. And again, this is monochrome, but you can see that it's actually loading something. So I don't know if I've gotten this game to actually run yet, but I knew that the computer was working. So that's kind of where I stopped. This enter key is not working. I'm going to have to take apart the keyboard, probably retrobrite, clean all the keys, retrobrite the keys, retrobrite the case. I'm sure I can get this enter key working by maybe sacrificing a component from one of the other keys. Like I'm not probably going to use, you know, the asterisk over there. I probably will use the function key. So it'll probably be one of these keys over here that I might steal something from to fix this enter key, because obviously it's not working. I think that's the only one that's not working. And then also have to fix this power button and do some more learning. So that was my exploration into the Amiga 500, like rediscovering it, or discovering it maybe for the first time. You can see some of the graphics there. It's going to look a lot better in color, obviously, and when I get some sound hooked up. Maybe I'll come back at another video and show some gameplay. Alright, real quick, I just wanted to wrap up this video. I was browsing through this Amiga Basic book, which is actually pretty good. I would say that this is useful. I mean, if I was going to actually learn Basic, which I probably won't take the time to learn. But also I was going through this this guide here, the beginner's guide to the Amiga. I probably won't read this whole book, but I did read the first chapter, which was kind of just about the background of Commodore. There's some great YouTube videos, maybe I'll link to those, that kind of cover the history of Commodore and stuff. But this book actually has some stuff on like the legacy of Jack Tramiel, and you know, the fact that he was in concentration camps and stuff in Auschwitz or something like that, which was pretty interesting. And it kind of talks about a little bit about the history of Commodore, and you know, Jack going to Atari and all that stuff. This book actually is more about the Amiga 1000 that I think came out in 1985, whereas I think the Amiga 500 came out actually in 1987, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not positive about that. But here, real quick, just to wrap up the video, there's a section here about communications and about buying a modem, talking about buying a 2400 or 1200 baud modem instead of a 300. I'm just like, holy crap, this is a long time ago. And then it says, that the price of a 1200 baud modem was between $300 and $500. That's insane. I couldn't imagine somebody spending $500 for a damn 2400 baud modem. So maybe it's a good thing that I never was like that into the Amigas, or maybe I got into the internet a little bit later on, right before the open internet was kind of back in the CompuServe and those kinds of times. So anyway, this is super expensive. Like, here's one. It says a smart modem 1200's around $700. When the hell was this book published? I just found that interesting. So anyway, on the next video, I'm going to do a series of videos. Hopefully it's somewhat interesting to other people, but it's really just me documenting my own learning and my own little journey here. But I'm going to fix the keys. I'll probably do a video of that. I'm going to retro bright the case and fix the keys, and I'm also going to fix that button. And I probably will do like the mod, at least upgrade it to a full 1 meg of RAM, and maybe do something else from a hard drive standpoint, or I'm sure they have some aftermarket parts where I can actually get games on here a little bit easier than obviously a 3.5 inch floppy disk. So alright, well anyway, that was my Amiga adventure and my Amiga pickup story, I guess. Hopefully it was interesting to somebody besides me. See ya.